Nerdiest Prime.
Hi, and welcome to Nerdiest Prime, where we are reviewing Star Trek V for the 35th anniversary. It came out on June 9th, 1989. And let's talk about our first impressions, a little bit like when you saw it, how old you were when you saw it, and what your impression was at the time, and what your impression was this time when you watched it for this review. Let's start with Alan.
Well, I'd just like to start off for posterity's sake that StarTrek.com's own post about this movie has still been up for over 24 hours, stating that this is the 40th anniversary of this 1989 movie in 2024. No one has corrected it, despite many, many comments trying to tell them that they're wrong.
Well, I'm convinced that anybody who works at StarTrek.com doesn't actually like Star Trek.
Doesn't know anything about it. I know, it seems that way.
Or math. Anyway. They don't like Star Trek or math.
Star Trek: The Final Frontier, a film so poorly received by critics and audiences alike, it easily could have become the Frontier's final movie. We begin with Captain Kirk falling off a mountain, which would have made for a short run time, if not for a timely rescue from Spock, who had the foresight to pack rocket boots for a camping trip. All this near-death experience makes Kirk, Spock, and McCoy hungry for alcoholic beans, singing and toasting marshmelons, the unhealthiest of all melons. But in short order, Starfleet cancels shore leave for the crew of the Enterprise, and they take off after a madman Vulcan named Sybok, who is taking hostages on Nimbus 3, a dump of a planet once meant to bring galactic peace. The Enterprise is in rough shape, but rather than give Kirk temporary command of the shiny new Excelsior that is parked right next to them, they send them in a ship where not even the view screen works right. Starfleet brass is not known for smart decisions. They head to Nimbus 3 to rescue the hostages, being followed by a bird of prey, captained by the Klingon with the dumbest name ever, Captain Claw. Should have named him Captain Blah, because he is also the boring-est Klingon ever. Kirk heads an attack force that realizes they have no way to approach the colony without being noticed. Not a problem. Uhura packed a couple of ostrich wings or something and does an unsexy impromptu dance routine to distract the easily impressed lookouts.
Hello, boys. I've always wanted to play to a captive audience.
The crew steal their robes and horses and gain entry into the colony. But soon, a firefight breaks out between Sybok's followers and the Enterprise landing party. Kirk finds himself attacked by a cat alien stripper with 3 breasts. Usually, this would end with Kirk bedding the alien lady and visiting McCoy to clear up any STDs. But this time he tosses the cat alien into a pool table with a few inches of water which she drowns in somehow. Well, they find the hostages and surprise. They are also brainwashed into following Sybok, so now Kirk and company are captured. And, double surprise, Sybok is Spock's half-brother, and he needs a starship to fly to the center of the galaxy and have a meet and greet with God. He puts Kirk, Spock, and McCoy in the brig, and they spend about 3 minutes in there before Scotty busts them out with exploding walls. They escape up the turbo shaft after Spock runs and gets those rocket boots. Boy, those sure are a useful invention. I bet they'll have many practical applications in future Trek adventures. But by the time they finally get close to retaking the ship, they've already arrived at God's planet, Sha-Ka-Ri, so everyone decides, we'll all go and meet God. But plot twist, God is just some alien jerk-off looking for a sucker to help him escape this planet he is stuck on, and he found that sucker in Sybok. Sybok says he is sorry, but it's a little late for sorries. And in orbit, Captain Claw finally catches up to the Enterprise and is hoping to kill Kirk, and the Klingon ambassador they rescued on Nimbus 3 forces him to relinquish control of his ship to Spock. Spock then flies down and photon torpedoes the giant floating head of God that is chasing and trying to eye-zap Kirk. Spock beams Kirk aboard, and he tries to hug Spock for giving him this new lease on life. But Spock is not a fan of PDAs in front of the Klingon crew. And then they go back to Earth and resume camping and singing, and this time Spock is breaking out the lute. Oh yeah, this is going to be one bitchin' jam sesh.
Ooh. So yeah, I probably saw this again, probably caught it on cable some point in the 90s after I became a Star Trek fan. I know they always ran these movies on ASN or Spacey Imagination Station. So I think I caught up with a lot of these movies during that period when I finally got cable in my room and a VCR. And I could watch these movies I never saw when they actually came out. So, probably mid-90s. So probably like 5 or 6 years after it actually came out. This one, yeah, it's never really resonated that much with me. It was kind of, when I would read about the odd-numbered movie curse, this one seemed to fit that definition. It seems to be the movie that made that theory become more mainstream. Because one is boring, but it's good, and visually and production wise. And 3 is, as we reviewed recently, it's great. But this one is not very good. There's some great character moments, but overall the story is weak. The effects are some power. But yeah, the only thing that holds it together is the cast, really.
Is that your impression of seeing it today? I don't feel like you really answered my question.
Right.
What was your impression when you first saw it? Did you spit at the TV, and then what was your impression today? Did you fall asleep?
I feel like I just had kind of a, to it. It was kind of a nothing burger. And today it's like, like I said, it's the characters that make it watchable. I'll say that.
What does that mean? What does nothing burger mean? I don't understand that.
It means
it's a burger made out of nothing.
Well, yeah, it's a bun. It's a plain bun filled with nothing. you want it to be filled with a delicious burger with cheese and bacon.
Oh, it's a veggie
mayo
burger.
and yeah, you get a Beyond Meat burger instead of a real meat burger. This movie just fraught with problems, so we'll get into it.
Okay, Namir, what is your impression? What were your first impressions when you first saw this movie, and what were your impressions today?
I was I was like Alan. I did not like it the first time I saw it, and I watched it again today. I just finished watching it a couple of hours ago, and the weird thing is, like, every time I watch this movie, I like it more and more, which I don't really understand. So I really kind of liked it. I don't get it. I had a really, really good time watching it. And I didn't really understand why. I mean, it's fun to watch. The characters are really great. They're the characters that we know. It's just, I just had a really good time. I can't explain it.
I will tell you why. Because this is... So I'm okay. I'm going to be fair and say, when I saw this movie in 1989, I was 13 years old, and I had just gotten into Star Trek. I just become a huge Star Trek fan probably like 2 months earlier. So this was the first movie that I was going to see in theaters, first release, like opening weekend or whatever, first Star Trek movie. And I'm not going to lie, I was a little disappointed. I was like, it was really kind of building up to something and then really kind of deliver. However, it is my favorite Star Trek movie. It has these very spiritual and existential themes that really stuck with me over the years. And I never get tired of the movie. It's really exciting. I love it. I think, and we'll get into it, but if they hadn't run into certain problems during production, I think it has the makings of like the greatest Star Trek movie. And we can talk about it more and debate it. And that was, and I watched it today, and it's the same thing as every time I watch it. I'm like, fuck, this movie's good. Fuck, I love it so much. Let's watch it again. Okay, let's get into it. And we'll start with Namir. Yosemite vacation and campfire scene. Thoughts?
Well, I have to collect my thoughts a little bit, because I love the opening, but I feel like I shouldn't love the opening. It kind of feels like it's a whole, spotlight on William Shatner. Look at how great I am. It reminds me of that opening scene from Mission Impossible, where Tom Cruise is scaling El Capitan, or he's scaling like a huge mountain just to make himself look great. And this is sort of how this movie starts, but it doesn't turn into that, right? Like he just, he's doing it because he's like an adventuresome guy, but he doesn't get to the top, right? And then there's this great comedic moment where Spock, flies up on his rocket boots, and they have this conversation, and he falls, and Bones is there, angry, but not being able to do anything. And it really kind of solidifies their relationship. Like, if you never had seen a Star Trek movie before, or even Star Trek at all, you can come into this movie and know exactly how those three characters relate to each other just in that scene. And so I think it does it really well, and it's funny, it's hilarious. I love Spock's like dedicated marshmallow machine. He's just got this one machine, and all it does, I imagine, is make marshmallows. that's it. Which is amazing. And they do the row, row, row your boat song, which comes back around near the end. It's just so smart. And this time watching it, I started to really pick up on a lot of that stuff. And Lucas, you and I have had conversations around this movie, and I've always said, "Oh, this movie sucks. I hate it." And you're like, "No, there's some good things in it." And I'm starting to believe you. The more I watch it, the more I can kind of see these things. The more I peel back the layers of the onion.
Sorry, just to go back to the camping scene too. It's like, I've just recently realized that Spock mispronounced marshmallow as marshmallow, and and like Kirk keeps bringing it up throughout the movie, like, "Oh, which one's the marshmallows?" or something. And I always thought it was a weird pronunciation, and I thought that was just Nimoy, saying it wrong. But it's actually like Spock saying it wrong, and then the other guys are picking up on it, and then the tone of it sounds like that they're mocking him, and he said marshmallow wrong. It's like, oh yes, you got any more of those marshmallows? Like they say it in a weird way, like that they're making fun of him, but he never picks up on it. And I just recently picked up on that.
A marshmallow. I'll be there. A marshmallow.
I just assumed that's how they say it in the States. Is that in the
That's
United
what
States,
I thought too. I was like, maybe just a weird thing, like lieutenant versus lieutenant or something like that. But no, he says it wrong, and they bring it up like 2 or 3 times, where they kind of like, make fun of.
Now I'm seeing that scene totally differently.
Yes, I have a marshmallow.
What did you think, Namir?
About marshmallows?
Yes.
I think I thought that he said marshmallows. I don't know. I was trying to look it up because I have the movie open, so I wanted to check to see what he actually says. But hang on. I'm right here on the scene. Hang on, let's see.
What do you do after you roast the marshmallows?
Yes, that's easy. It's like
right. Yeah, he does say marshmallow. And then Bones is like, "Well, I'll be damned, a marshmallow." That doesn't make sense.
And then during that jailbreak scene, they bring it up again, like about the marshmallow. I forget what he says.
No. What do you mean with the rocket boots? He's like, "Oh, I think we've had too many marshmallows."
Right.
That is so good. Now, there's a whole. It's the gift that just keeps on giving. 35 years later, there's a whole new appreciation of a joke.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, that's what I love about this movie. Like it's funny every single time, and it really emphasizes that they were really good friends, right? Like that's kind of a thing that like friends always have these inside jokes, and they always come back, and that's what happens in this movie.
It's like us.
Yeah, look at this Hollywood dog walking stories.
Exactly.
It is food metaphors.
Yeah.
I knew I wouldn't die because the two of you were with me.
I do not understand.
I've always known I'll die alone.
Yeah, well, I think the campfire scenes particularly is like so well written because it has all this banter, and it's all the classic Spock McCoy banter, and they managed to make it exactly kind of like what it feels like in the original series, but better. And it's not repetitive. It's not like a bunch of jokes that they've made before. And then there's that really like serious moment in the middle, and that's the whole point of the climbing sequence, is that he's trying to like do this thing that he's never done before, reach new heights, which is all what Star Trek's about. When he falls off the mountain and he almost dies because he risks his life, and then he has that moment of like, well, I knew I wasn't going to die because I always known I'd die alone, and I was like 13 years old, and I was like, oh my God, he knows he's going to die alone. Why is he going to die alone? It's so like sad, but also like kind of makes sense in some weird poetic way.
Yeah, but you never find out why he knows that, I don't think. Like, I don't think it's in any of the movies or the shows or the novelizations. He just knows it.
Yeah, he just knows it. But that's like
just
the
a feeling in
spiritual
his
kind
heart.
of. Yeah, it's like the mystery of the universe. It's kind of what the movie's about. So, and then he ends up actually dying alone in Star Trek Generation. So he protected correctly. Alan, I'm sure you have thoughts.
Actually, no, Picard was there.
Yeah, Picard
No, but
was
I
there.
think he was. Picard was there, but I think what he meant is like that McCoy and Spock weren't going to be there.
Yeah,
If he
maybe.
died alone, there'd be nobody to build him a little rock grave.
Yeah.
And
In
would
Generations,
just rot
he
there
should
to
have been
ground.
like just before he dies, he looks at Picard and goes, "Turn around, walk 10 paces that way. I need to feel
Go behind
home."
that rock.
That rock.
Yeah, I mean, this movie is a strong opener. Like it's front loaded, I think, with the with the good stuff. The campfire scene again. Yeah, no debate here. It's a great scene. With our classic trio. I always enjoy the campfire scene. It is the best scene in this movie, and it's the very first one. It's always like the things that bother me about this scene, I think, is like the stuff that doesn't make any sense to me, like an overall Star Trek thing, which always bugs me, is the Spock rocket boots, or the Spocket boots, as I like to call them. I was like, you see this and you know what time frame it's in, and then you think about all the other Star Trek that comes after it, and all the times that rocket boots would have helped them get out of the jam, and there's never any rocket boots ever again in this franchise. I was like, don't have the rocket boots if they're not going to be a thing. But anyway, that's just my brain, thinking about the overall logic of the universe. But yeah, it's them being on shore leaving Yosemite, like even the little parts with Sulu and Chekhov, like it's all fun. Like it sets a tone where you think this is going to be a continuation of the fun vibe of Voyage Home, and the humor is there, speckled throughout, but it's just the overall plot is just not a good. There's no good things connecting this as a whole. It's a plot that right off the bat that they're not going to find God. Well, right.
Okay. Well, let's get into that. Let's talk about Alan. I'm curious about your thoughts about Sybok, and basically the release your pain, brainwashing thing that he does. Like that's his whole theme. And the big spoiler that he's Spock's half brother. What are your thoughts about Sybok?
I like the actor, and I like the character. But overall, his goal, his quest, it didn't grab me. Like it just seemed like, story wise, that this wasn't going to turn out to be anything but what it ended up being, really. Like, just a spoiler alert, bad aliens living in their universe and manipulating someone's beliefs system to their own ends. They were never going to find, the source of all creation. Again, I don't think anyone can really depict that, in a strict definition. Like, like in Star Trek, they have like Space Koala, and Burnham just found the projectile tech and all this stuff. But there's still a question about what does all this mean? We don't know. So, that's always what I thought watching this. I'm like, it's funny is what that Roddenberry wasn't really involved, because it felt like a Roddenberry thing. It's like always like the search for God and everything, and it was always my least that's what I had the least interest in was these pursuits for knowing their origins or whatever.
Well, and the thing with Sybok is that and how he functioned in the movies, he's sort of supposed to be the bad guy, but that turns out not to be a bad guy. And we just recently we were reviewing the last season of Discovery, and they sort of had the same problem where they had Mal and Locke be the sort of the antagonist, but they're not really the antagonist because they're like really the criminals with the heart of gold or whatever.
Yeah, I like that he brought a different flavor. He wasn't just power hungry, or it wasn't. There was no revenge theme. It wasn't your standard villain for a movie. So it was interesting that they that they tried to go a different direction with it, and make him a threat, but also kind of ground him a bit. Like he's family. He tries to be your friend. He's more relatable than like say Khan or Krug or those villains.
Yeah, well, that's why he's interesting, right? Because he's not, not to go all film schooly, but he's an antagonist. He's just not a bad guy, right? Like he's the opposite, right? He drives that story forward and he does it really well. So I think that's interesting, right? Like I think it's an interesting character in Star Trek, because usually, the bad guy is somebody who's actually a bad guy, right? Like Khan is a great example, and Christopher Lloyd is, another great example, right? Like they're the opposite of the Star Trek crew, right? Like the Enterprise crew. So that to me made it interesting, right? Like I liked Sybok. I liked that he was complicated. I liked that he was trying to do something without violence. He was searching for something more. And ultimately, like, he was able to convince everybody to sort of be on his side at the end, right? Which is always kind of surprised me, right? Like where, Kirk and Spock and Bones, they're like, okay, well, we don't believe this guy, but he's going to go through this barrier. And once he gets through the barrier, they're like, okay, I guess we're going to go down on the planet. And then they're sort of all on board, right? I like that. It was different.
Look, the man may be a fellow Vulcan, but that doesn't...
No, Captain. You do not understand. Sybok also is a son of Sarek.
You made that up.
I did not.
You did too. Sybok couldn't possibly be your brother, because I happen to know for a fact you don't have a brother.
Technically, you are correct. I do not have a brother.
You see?
I have a half-brother.
But do you buy the Sybok half-brother thing? Like, suddenly out of the blue, Spock has a half-brother? How do we feel about this, Namir?
You just have to make it personal somehow.
Yeah, like just like what Alan said, I think there needed to be some sort of connection to Spock, and that was an all right way of doing it. Like
But did you guys believe it? Like, did it feel like one of those written trope, like the long lost brother? What? I didn't know I had a brother. This kind of thing.
A little
just
bit.
as a way to.
I believed it because I felt like that would work in their society, right? Like it's totally plausible that Sarek would have another partner, and that they would have a kid, and then he would move on, right? Like, and it's also completely plausible that Spock wouldn't tell anybody because it's not relevant, right? Like, why would he tell anybody?
I mean, I remember seeing it the first time and be like, I don't believe that he never would have mentioned it. But watching it this time and thinking about it, I was like, well, actually, if you think about it, he was the black sheep. He's like, if you come from a Catholic family, he's the one who became a gangster, or vice versa. If you come from, I don't know, I like he went to the opposite of the values of the family. He was basically like an embarrassment, and especially to Spock. Now there's a scene that got cut from, and we'll talk about the mind meld scene a little later, but that cut from the mind meld scene that showed that Spock actually was believing in Sybok and almost went with Sybok way back when. So I could imagine that when Spock decided to go the more like logical route, that he might have been embarrassed of those feelings of that. Oh, he almost went that way. So it totally makes sense that he never would have mentioned it, because it's kind of like a dirty secret that you don't want to talk about.
Yeah, I totally bought it. Like I also bought that everyone was surprised, right? Where Kirk is like, I know Spock doesn't have a brother. And Spock's like, well, technically, it's my half-brother, you know? And you're like, yeah, that makes complete sense. I totally get it.
And they did a good. I think they did a good job of using humor to explain it, instead of it's sort of like the Klingons not having ridges in Trials and Tribulations. Instead of going into some big techno babble, blah blah blah. Why they just go, oh, we don't talk about it, you know, basically. and that's the same thing they do here. Is like, it's like, you don't have a brother. I happen to know for a fact that you don't have a brother. It's like, and then he's almost like they're like kids in a playground or something. He's like, well, technically correct. I don't have a brother. He's like, you see, I told you. It's like, I have a half brother. He's like, oh, it's like so angry. and then the backstory is so interesting that, you know, his mother was a Vulcan priestess or a Vulcan princess. I always mix up
Princess,
which is like, what, there's like no nobility and royalty involved, and then it makes sense if his first wife died, then maybe Sarek, you know, then he decided to go the other way, and especially if there's that sort of a human emotional part that is part of Sybok, it's going to be part of Sarek, and they, you know, like, I don't know, it just kind of actually, once you accepted it, it makes a lot of sense in the lore of Spock and, you know, his Vulcan family.
Maybe that was Amanda's influence. Maybe as a stepmom.
Yeah. Oh, I wonder.
Embrace your emotions.
Did she die in childbirth, the first mom, or did she? I guess I didn't know at what point Amanda came into the picture.
I guess I just assumed that there was some sort of being raised together, since Spock has obviously a knowledge of him, you know, in a previous relationship.
Oh yeah. See what you mean.
Alluded to. So I assume he would have been present during Spock's childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, Amanda would be in the picture.
Well, and talking about casting, I don't know if you guys know this, but the original choice for Sybok was Sean Connery. And
that would have been ridiculous.
Sean Connery declined because he was in Indiana Jones in the Last Crusade, and they filmed it over there around the same time, and but that's why the planet is called Shakari, because they were so William Shatner loved Sean Connery, so he's like, I'm going to name the planet Shakari after Sean Connery. So the Sean Connery is still part of this movie, and I'm, you know, as you guys know, I'm such a huge James Bond fan, so if Sean Connery would have been in a Star Trek movie, I think my brain would have melted. Okay, we're gonna get into this later, but I'm like, imagine if the visual effect, if they hadn't had the writer's strike, if they didn't have a budget issues, and Ilum wasn't busy, and they got Ilum to do the visual effects, and the ending didn't get cut off, and they had Sean Connery as Sybok. Oh my god, it would have been like
the greatest movie ever.
Yeah, because then it could have been about, like, this movie could have been really good, you know, as long as the journey, you know, it's one of those ones where you realize that their goal is not gonna bear fruit, but the journey, as long as the journey is fun getting there, and it's well done, then it's okay. But yeah, the journey kind of fell apart towards the end with a lack of fun.
And it's funny because I actually think that older Sean Connery kind of looks like older Leonard Nimoy a little bit. You know, not to the point where they look the same, but look enough that they could look like brothers or half brothers. And just to add to another twist to it, in Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, is that the second one?
I don't follow Transformers.
One of the Transformers movies, Leonard Nimoy plays a Transformer, and visually the Transformer is based on Sean Connery's face. So you see Sean Connery's Transformer face and Leonard Nimoy's voice. It was like, that like kind of brings it all together.
I will overlook your condescending tone. If you heed the gravity of mine, it would mean the end of your world.
Okay.
Eden. Call it what you will. The Klingons call it Kuitu. To the Romulans, it's Vortavor. The Andorian word is unpronounceable. Still, every culture in existence shares this common dream of a place from which creation sprang. For us, that place will soon be reality.
So how do we feel about I mean, Alan, you brought it up. How do we feel about the search for God? The whole movie is about we're gonna go find God. That's the plot. How do you guys feel about that?
I feel like I'm on a journey with Kirk in this one because he's like, this is ridiculous. I'm like, you're crazy, and he just kind of rolls his eyes. Hey, that's kind of how I felt watching it. I'm like, I'm just Kirk is basically expressing how I feel about his mission and his plan. But it's just a big silly waste of time, and a lot of people could end up hurt, wasting this time and effort.
All right, I was picturing Sean Connery as Sybok, and the only thing that I can think of is Zardoz.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's what he would look like. I think it would have made the movie a lot better if he was in like a little one piece, his hairy chest. What was the question you're asking about Kirk?
No, we're talking about the search for God.
The search
just
for
that
God.
little thing, just that thing.
I mean, I like when Star Trek does shows about big questions, and I think they did this one in a really interesting way. And the whole thing was really well done. I found, I believed Sybok's motivations, and I like that at the end they sort of played with our sort of beliefs about what God would look like, like the old guy with the beard and all of that. So you go in and you're like, oh, they found God, and then that turns around really quickly. So, I think this whole the themes in this movie are really interesting because it's all about life and death and finding yourself, finding spirituality, and Bones' scene with his dad was really, really great. It's the first time where you kind of find out more about McCoy, right? Where you find out a little bit about his life. And so I think all of these things kind of did really come together nicely. Even the row, row, row your boat song, life is but a dream. I think it all really fit, and these are all things that I never noticed before, right? They're only things that I'm noticing every time I kind of watch it. So I think they did it really well.
Okay, let's talk about the Klingons. So because the bad guys in this movie are Klingons, they you kind of have this little teaser in Star Trek 4 where the Klingons are like, there will be no peace as long as Kirk lives, and you're just like waiting for the Klingons to come back. In Star Trek 4, they never come back, and then they show up here, and you're like, okay, now we're gonna get some serious Klingon Kirk action, but it doesn't kind of really happen.
Yeah,
Amir, what are your thoughts?
They're pretty lame. I mean, they don't
They
have
were
the same,
very lame.
Yeah, they don't have the same bite as the Klingons in Star Trek 3. They're not menacing at all. I feel like they were kind of wasted. Just they could have used another race. I felt like you could just like cut all of their parts out of the entire movie, and you're not going to miss a thing. And I think I don't know why. I think it's like they didn't have the same amount of, I don't know how to put this, but Klingon-ness. Like they almost seem nicer. They almost seem like a little bit more subdued than the other Klingons that we were introduced to. Like in Star Trek 3, like if somebody went against the commander, that was like an instant disruptoring and disintegration, right? But But over here, it just seemed like a little bit more like you made a mistake. Oh, okay, maybe next time. Don't worry about it. Here's a sandwich. Like
Yeah.
so I
Captain
don't know.
Claw, who had a stupid name, also was like he was like the worst Klingon captain ever. Like it felt like he was the guy who got put in the captain's chair because his dad knew somebody. Like he seemed just like a teenager with a chip on his shoulder, and like I'm gonna make a name for myself. And he was really annoying. Yeah, like that's all it was. Like I'm gonna get Kirk first. And it's like he was never gonna do it. He didn't have the chops. He didn't have the skills to take Kirk on.
No.
The only good thing about the Klingons in this was that they used some of their budget to build a really awesome Klingon bridge set, and then they reused that a lot going forward.
Yeah, I love the
the
periscope
brand new bridge set and the brand new bridge set.
The periscope that comes down.
Yeah,
so
it's
awesome. It comes down and it's got these arms that connects to the chair, and it's just like moving as a unit. That's the best part of the Klingons in this movie.
I know, and it's just wasted with having that guy in the chair.
Well, I think the main problem with Captain Claw is that there's no real resolution to him. Like to have him as a bad guy, and then at the end of the movie, he just says, "I'm sorry." And you're like, "What? What? No." And it just means that they do it for a laugh, so it's a good laugh. But in terms of the dramatic weight of the movie, there's no antagonist because Sybok's not the antagonist, and Captain Claw is not really the antagonist. He's like sort of chasing them along the way, but then it ends up into nothing. And then so the real antagonist is, I don't know what he's called, but the energy being Shankari. Shankari is really the bad guy in this movie. But he shows up in the last 10 minutes of the movie, and then he's pretty much dead as soon as he shows up. So there's no build up to that character. And they're trying to do a tricky thing, which is they're trying to shift the antagonist. They're trying to do Psycho, or like, well, the murderer is this person, or the main character is this person. This character dies. Now this can be the main character. No, this person dies. And so, and so Hitchcock can do that, but it's very hard to make a bad guy. Oh, that's not the bad guy. This is the bad guy. No, that's not the bad guy. This is the bad guy. And I think if they had kept him, Captain Claw, as the bad guy, in the same way as they have multiple bad guys in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and they'll get like melted at the end. Like if he would have like gone down to the planet and be like, I want the power, Shakari, and he got like melted or something, that would have been fucking awesome. That I would have watched the movie again right then.
That guy didn't deserve a cool death. He wasn't good enough to get.
No, but you could have made him cooler. You just write him differently. It's not like that difficult.
I know.
It's really the ending.
He was a real letdown from Christopher Lloyd. That's for sure.
Yeah, because basically what happens at the end is like his dad comes to the party, and it just has like, you guys shouldn't be drinking. All right, Fred, let's go. And pulls him out of the house.
Apologize.
Well, but the other problem is just in terms of the arc of the movies is that you have Crouch killing David, Kirk's son, and then Kirk going like, "Oh, I hate Klingons," and now it's kind of ramping up to like a big confrontation with the Klingons, and then in Star Trek 4, you kind of have that little scene where it's like, well, the Klingons hate Kirk, and so okay, it's building, and then so it feels like it should have happened now, ends up happening in Star Trek 6. So it's great because we do eventually get that, but in this movie, it kind of just goes and then at the end, they're like, we're all friends with the Klingons. Yay. You're like, what? She has beautiful muscles.
Yeah. That was problematic.
Guess who's coming to dinner?
I know. And then it's like they're in Star Trek 6, they're all like, oh, I can't believe we're having the Klingons over for dinner. I'm like, you just partied and drank with them in the last movie. Shouldn't be a problem.
Well, one thing I will say about the Klingons in this movie is that they're actually speaking Klingon, and those actors all learn Klingon, and they're just doing it live on the set. And I think actually I might have misspoke during the Star Trek 3 review. I think it was a mix because there's definitely some of that Klingon that you can look at the lips and you can tell they're speaking English. But there's other times where Christopher Lloyd is like, no, I think he's actually speaking Klingon in this. So
yeah, I wonder if they would have been more menacing if they spoke English instead of Klingon. Because
with a German accent.
With is he German? Yeah, totally.
And a mustache to twirl.
Yeah.
And their plan was to throw people on tracks.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I felt that really worked in Star Trek 3, right? Where Christopher Lloyd was basically, he's speaking most of his lines in English, so he could kind of chew into them a little bit, right? And kind of act around it and sort of add some dramatic tension. And I don't know if the Klingons in this movie had a chance to do that, because essentially they're speaking a made up language that they don't speak naturally, right? It's not like they learned Klingon at home, right? And they're not using it in public. They just learned it for this movie. Not even that. They probably just learned how to say the words phonetically, and they were just saying them, right? So I don't know. It feels like it would be a lot trickier to act around that and add some drama to the words by doing that.
So it's you.
Yeah. See, I don't know. That's whatever that meant. It didn't make me feel that. I don't know.
I think it was great.
Lucas loves his two Klingon lines. He knows these movies.
Yeah. It's
the only two Klingon words he knows.
I just know
engage cooking device. I know that.
Right. And then what's the other one?
That will be useful one day. That will come into good use.
No. The other one, the one that's most useful, it's malts. Chewy. And then he gets...
No, it's choy chew.
Oh, whatever. See, I don't even need... Maltz is like, stay on the planet? Okay.
Nimbus 3 may be a worthless lump of rock, but it does have one unique treasure. It's the only place in the entire galaxy that has the three of you.
Okay, let's talk about Nimbus 3 and the Paradise City and the hostages and how that all plays out and the that set and all that kind of stuff.
When I first saw this, I was like, yeah. I'm just jumping in. And when I first saw this, I was like, this is the excuse for Kirk to film horses. Wow. I was like, because that guy loves horses. In Generations, he gets a horse in there. In this movie, he gets horses all over the place. I'm like, because the opening scene with Sybok coming to that guy who's digging holes, and I'm like, he just wanted the horse. He wanted the horse riding in his opening shot.
But I like that the horses are blue and they have a little unicorn.
Oh yes, they got alien horses. Yeah.
I love that in the action scene where two things I like is that I realized today that Spock does a pun.
I was just going to say
Kirk
that.
Comes in. Yeah. Tell me. Go.
No, you go. That's fine.
Spock, hold your horse, Captain.
Kirk is like, where are the hostages? He's like, hold your horse, Captain. He's like, oh, he actually means hold his horse. Like, yeah. I was like, oh, that was funny. That was really funny.
Clever, very clever writing.
Yeah. There was they try to free the hostages in Nimbus 3. First of all, I love that they built that whole town in the middle of the desert, in like actual desert.
Yeah,
and great. Yeah, and I just love the idea of Nimbus 3, of like this planet that's supposed to be like the planet of the galactic peace. It's like in the middle of the neutral zone, and there's the three representatives, and it's kind of a little dystopian, but you can kind of see how it makes sense. I feel like this movie is very 80s. Also, it's got these kind of
it's very Mad Max.
Yeah.
Very Road Warrior in the theme.
But there's just like themes that come in, like hostage taking, cult leaders, all that kind of stuff that was prevalent at the time, in the news. But also little things like we're going to talk about costumes later, but like Kirk is wearing Levi's in the beginning of the movie, like actual just Levi's, and it's just like he looks like he's like in normal street clothes, and he's in a plaid shirt. He looks like a hipster in the Halifax North End. Like I don't understand. Why
you get the heavy cotton sweaters throughout the movie, like your sailing ship in the North Atlantic?
I love that. That's like that they add that. What do you guys think about the town and that the hostage rescue scene?
Oh, I love that scene. Because it's I think it's the one time we have any pulse pounding action in this movie. So it's there's chaos and fights, and I always I've never understood this, and maybe someone can say if I'm missing something because I've watched this movie a lot. Like, why does the three-breasted Catwoman die when she ends up in that pool? Like, you just literally just throws her in a pool of water, and then she's like floating there dead. Or
I
nothing.
I don't think she dies. I think she ends up in that pool of water and goes, what am I doing with my life?
If I threw my cat into the water, to be like,
yeah. I think she was just like, I'm just going to stay here.
I always just thought it was weird that he wrestles this Catwoman and in the water, and then that's the end of it. Done. That's what it is. Or she's really allergic to her species is really allergic to water. But then
maybe
again,
she's a gremlin.
Why is she working and dancing around water? It's just so dangerous.
Hold on. Is she Cajun? It just never occurred to me. That's what she is. Oh my god, that's amazing. Yeah, is that what they're
like
called?
Dr. Ta'ana from Discovery or not Discovery, Lower Deck.
Oh, you're right.
There's a Cajun behind you.
There's a Cajun running behind you right now into a window.
Oh my god, I'm gonna throw some water. See what happens. We'll run an experiment.
I remember there was a Cajun also in Star Trek 4 in the Federation Council scene.
What's that?
Damn.
She naked?
And we, of course, get Nichelle Nichols' sexy feather dance in the desert too to lure
That's definitely a low point of the movie.
Yeah,
I think.
I was like, was she naked?
Always...
Did she actually get naked for that subterfuge? Like,
I don't think so.
Hey, Captain, I know how to make a distraction. I was like, I'll just strip down. I don't know where these other things came from.
I'll just use these palm fronds. Get these palm fronds from a desert.
I had these back in the back of the shovel here. I'll just grab them. I got a whole dance ensemble, and I'll distract them.
It's kind of like something out of a cartoon, you know. Don't worry, I'll distract them.
I know. Yeah, you wait till their eyes bulge out of their head when they see her. Like,
yeah, and somehow her like angelic voice just wafts across the base. They can hear her from like the other side.
I mean, the thing that I do like is they actually use her as singing in this movie, and it's like the only movie that actually brings up that part of her character.
It's the only movie that brings up their relationship with Scotty, which you just told me about that I never picked up on. And now I kind of saw it.
Oh, it's definitely there. It's not even implied. It's like clear.
Nothing before or after this movie, and that's why I never picked up on it. I just never put those two together.
It was so obvious, though, that they were like,
well, I just thought she was acting all lovey with him, like touching his face and being sweet because she was brainwashed by Sybok.
Oh, no, but she does it at the beginning.
She does it at the beginning. I'm like, oh, they are trying to imply that they're like dating, and I'm like, that makes no sense.
I mean, it depends. I mean, I don't know if you have coworkers that are always touching your face, and
no, not particularly. I'm making a hug from like an older lady coworker in past jobs, but you know,
no, but she's being flirty with him at the beginning of the movie, way before Sybok comes in.
Well, that's what I realized this time because I never really picked up on that, and then you told me about it. Now I was watching for it, and I'm like, oh, they did put that in here, and it doesn't feel right.
Which doesn't bother me, but that's totally dropped in the next movie, and that's what bothered me.
I kind of disagree. Yeah. I think it felt like nice. You know, I was like, okay, yeah, this kind of makes sense. And I always just assume that, you know, even though it was dropped and that they don't, you know, expressly show it again, that it was always the case.
That's why I can like buy into like Nurse Chapel and Spock in Strange New Worlds, because they had that kind of relationship in TOS. Like there was a seed of something there, but this had no seeds anywhere in the show. Like I don't know if did those two ever talk to each other on a non-professional basis, like Scotty being in command saying, Uhura, open a channel to whoever. And like, I don't, it just come out of nowhere.
What's that noise?
I believe it is a primitive form of communication known as Morse code.
You're right.
Well, okay, let's talk about the prison break, because I love the prison break.
I think that's a stretch that they could figure out that Morse code tapping. I would just think, is there a mouse in the wall? What is that noise?
There's a mouse communicating with us.
I would not pick up on the fact that was Morse code.
I love the whole scene where they're in the brig and they have that whole conversation about Sybok, and it's just like so. The dialogue is so sharp. It's almost like Tarantino before Tarantino. It's like Star Trek Tarantino. They're just going like, and it's just very witty. That's funny. And then they hear the Morse code, and the wall blows up, and it's like Scotty's like, "What are you standing around for?"
Did you ever see that jailbreak
when you see one?
What are you standing around for? Do you not know a jailbreak when you see one?
And then they go into the bows of the ship, which you see a little bit of that, like in the original series,
cool.
but they go into the turbo shaft, and then with the rocket boots, and I love all that stuff. It's like amazing.
And they got 76 decks, which makes no sense. But anyway, I thought people get after Discovery because they had turbo lifts that were going into this big void. It's like, this doesn't make any sense in scheme of a starship. But then it's like, well, Star Trek 5, they're going rocketing up, and there's like 76 decks in this ship. I'm like, there's like 20 or 25 in the actual like technical manual or model. And they repeat decks too. They keep reusing the same shot. And I think they passed like deck 52.
Well, that's not the problem, really.
I'm sorry, I noticed these things and they bug me.
This is the two problems. Number one is that if you watch the previous movies, and granted, that's the other Enterprise that got blown up. The first deck is called A, and there's B and C going downwards. And the other thing is in all other Star Trek, deck 1 is the top, and then it goes all the way down, like in Next Generation, deck 37 or whatever is down below engineering. So if they were at the bottom,
76
they should have been
the bridge, right? They should have just popped down the bridge. They just flew out of the turbo lift into the bridge.
Well, but what I'm saying is that it should have been it should have been the other way around, the numbers.
Yeah,
but aside from that, I have no
But
problem.
it is a cool scene. It is a fun scene, despite the fact that it has logic gaps. But I like seeing the bows of the ship and the turbo shot, because I'm disappointed with how little effort was put into disguising the TNG sets as being the Enterprise A. And I'm
you
like,
mean non-disguising? The non-disguising?
Yeah, they didn't. It was like they didn't paint the doors or put on the TOS movie era iconography or anything. It was just straight up, we're just shooting on the Next Generation sets and running through the corridors. And I'm like, I was waiting to see like Riker come around the corner and being walk and talk with Data or something.
It's all a holodeck simulation.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and you can see it also in the sickbay scene. If you really pay attention, I think they brought. You remember there was those like plastic dividers that they had in the first couple episodes of season 1 of TNG, and then they got rid of them after that. I think they brought back the plastic dividers, but that's all they did to change it. If you look at the background of the scene, it's just you see like a computer panel, and it's the LCARS interface.
Oh, same thing with transporter room. It's obviously TNG's transporter room with like a plastic thing on the console that looks weird. And I don't know.
I kind of like that. It's like you get to see like little. It's like TNG gets to be in the movies before they get to be in the movies.
Yeah, I don't mind it so much. I feel like there's like a continuity of technology and design. It's kind of nice. It feels a little bit familiar.
Just like 80 years prior, though.
I know, but honestly, like our cars are not that different than 80 years ago, right? Everything has a seat.
Wow.
We all have steering wheels, right? There's an engine. There's seat belts. It's all kind of the same. Right?
I don't know if there were seat belts in cars 80 years ago.
Well, there's mirrors.
Yeah, but they spoke wheels and.
You have to crank it to turn it on, just like cars today.
Basically a horseless carriage.
But I just remember that we're so old that 80 years ago was actually the 1940s.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Had existed. Yeah.
Well, even
It's
those
not
cars
that-
are quite different than the ones we have today.
Well, they're different in terms of the way they look, right? But they still have similarities.
Well, that's what we're
my
talking
point.
about. We're saying it's
That's what I'm
corridor.
saying. Yeah. No. I know, but like the
You're just
trans-
defeating
you
your
know,
own point.
No, listen. Like a steering wheel is always going to look like a steering wheel, right? It's always going to be like a circle, on the dashboard, right?
But I have no problem that the
Okay, well,
hallways
always going to be
same.
a hallway.
But my problem is like they
Looks
didn't
exactly
even they
alike.
didn't even change the sticker. What would I have taken for the Jim to change the sticker? They changed the stickers on TNG. They go, oh, this is this week we're doing Commander Riker's quarters. So they put the Commander Riker sticker on, and then like, oh, this week we're doing the Picard quarters. So they put the Picard quarter sticker on. So and it's what they did in Star Trek 6. They use the same TNG sets, but they actually
I guess they
put a
ran out of
sticker
sticker money, and it was along with special effects money.
Yeah. Well, they spent so much money on the shuttle
Paradise
bay
City?
and Paradise City. Yeah, exactly.
Scott, you're amazing. There's nothing amazing about it. I know this ship like the back of my hand.
I know this ship like the back of my hand.
Oh, that's honestly the best joke in the entire series
Yeah.
of movies. Like it really is. It's hilarious until you see Scotty on the floor bleeding, and then you're like, oh,
No, it's like, man, that was a severe bump on the noggin. I feel
Yeah.
like if I hit a beam, it's like I got a little bit of a bruise, but I don't have like
no,
open
he's actually
gash.
bleeding. You're like, oh, he has a concussion. That's probably why they never mentioned the relationship between him and Uhura in subsequent movies, because he probably just forgot it. He's like, we're together? Are you sure? He's like, yeah.
You're way too good looking for me.
No, lassie, no.
No.